Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Klarafestival here in Brussels and to our program today on the Berlin STEGREIF Orchestra and to its concerts, especially in 1 hour time. I welcome Juri de Marco, who is artistic leader and indeed founder of STEGREIF Orchestra. Mr. de Marco, welcome to our program and thanks for allowing us to discuss with you about your amazing project. I especially want to draw attention that the listeners can ask questions via our chat, and our two colleagues, Anna and Orlando, will treat these questions in about 15 or 20 minutes time. So don't hesitate. If you have any questions, put them on the chat and we will try to answer them. Mr. De Marco, as you say on your personal website, you created STEGREIF 6 years ago, and I quote, to both enjoy and reject tradition. German, im Genuss und im Verstoß der Tradition. The orchestra is now well known as an amazing experiment in new ways to play classical music, and indeed the works of composers like Beethoven, Brahms, and Schubert. Can you explain in a few words what was your ambition and concept when you started this, and if they are still the same today?
Back at the time at the school, I did improvisation theater. I played in a jazz band. I sang in the choir. I played in the orchestra, and I founded a experimental band. And when I started my classical French horn studying in Berlin, I was thinking, why couldn't go these worlds together of performing, being like also a performer as a musician, use this wonderful classical material from the classical music and to redefine it, to rethink it. Behind the founding the orchestra was like this impulse of like, I have a vision of how I want to make music. Today we created this, and today we have this orchestra where we like perform differently without conductor, often without music sheets, a lot of improvisation, a lot of choreography. But right now we ask ourselves, what do we want to give to society? What plays, like, what is music for a role for society, and how do we live our democracy in a little world in the orchestra without conductor, and to experiment also with group sizes, with democratic aspects of groups, and also what is it about to like really improvise on classical music. In the beginning we went to a field which we didn't know really in the depth of what it is to really improvise with classical music. So there are popping up a lot of different fields as we opened for 5.5 years ago this orchestra. Whereas I could talk about it a lot, but maybe for now.
Yeah. But just pick up that point when you speak about the democratic aspect of the orchestra. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I love this topic. It's really interesting because for me, what I didn't like so far when I played in other orchestras was that me as a French horn player, I'm just this role of a French horn player, and I should play my score as perfect as I can, and that's it. And what I wanted to have with a more democratic structure, I would call it also like more sociocratic, or holocracy, is that I wanted to include all the sides, all the facets of a human being, when the human being also is able to play other genres because of the culture background. or like, for example, our clarinetist Nicola, which is seen also in the concert later. He comes from Serbia, and he included, because of his heritage, a lot of Serbian Balkan music. So it's really, for me, it's like organic that he brings this kind of culture into the orchestra. And the democratic aspect is then that people from all different cultures and musical backgrounds include all their abilities to make music. And in the end, the biggest democratic aspect is also how we do productions and how we rehearse, for example, because it's, for example, like that when we have a certain piece to rehearse, we do, like, for example, there's a jazz moment, there's a folk Balkan moment, and there's a really classical moment. So we divide this whole rehearsal into three spots and three parts, and three different people will rehearse these moments because of their background, because of their ability in a certain subject. So and this makes it possible that, yeah, like, you come half an hour later in the orchestra rehearsal and somebody else is on the role of the conductor and has to tell something. So it's like more a hierarchy which is based on what you can offer and what you can bring, and not related to, I'm the chef or the chief or something, and that's why I'm standing in front of something. So it's, yeah, much more based on this: what can I bring, what can I offer, what can I give to the group that it can grow.
Yeah, and that's in the city of Karajan then, that you do this. But which
Yeah.
brings me to the next question, of course. When you renew classical music with all kinds of influences from outside classical music, where is your limit? When is it no longer classical music in your mind or in your opinion, or is there no limit?
Hmm. Yeah, a big and interesting question. Um, I started several years ago to understand classical music not only as a certain style and a certain way of how classical music sounds. For me, it's also a framework how to listen and perceive classical music. For example, for me, a framework for classical music is that music is kind of a center, and you can focus on something, like this picture of like a big concert hall, and people are really silent, like really quiet. They're really listening to something which is happening. There's no much attraction going on. So for me, this is like a really wonderful and beautiful framework. Um, and I would love to bring this framework also to different stylistics, that you can really listen to this kind of, in this way, to other stylistics of music. This is the one part, so the framework, which I really like and want to enlarge somehow to different like groups of society. And the other one is that for me, classical music had earlier a lot of improvisational aspects, cadenzas, um, a lot of
Mhm.
like Mozart, I think, improvised so much. A lot of big composers improvised so much, and we forget that somehow. So in one interview which our drummer did with one of,
Oh,
we need more jazz, we need to improvise in classical music, and it's also hearable in the performance later. So it's like really this aspect of bringing this unique and improvised moment into the classical music back again. this is an aspect which makes concerts so unique and so, yeah, based on the moment, where you can't like press play again and you hear the same thing. You hear it every time differently, because the musician feel differently. The musicians feel, in case of you play a really live concert, also the audience, and then there's like an interaction, and you can feel the vibe in the whole concert hall. And then maybe a soft moment is longer, quiet, and the classical theme comes later, to like have more ability to perceive the moment, what it needs to be as touching as possible. Yeah.
Okay. And classical music today classical music is of course a European heritage, but it's now played all over the world, and you have the best performers in all places in the world. Um, but why are we Europeans so much obsessed with the heritage aspect of this heritage? We look it as a thing of the past that we have to cherish, but we have problems to renew it. Why should this be so, in your opinion? I'm not sure if there's an answer to this, but I still ask the question.
Okay. Um,
There's some back noise.
Orlando, uh, I hear you. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Rolf, for this also really interesting question. It's I did a really long European travel with trains 2 years ago, and it was really interesting to feel the sense of European heritage in these different countries. So I was almost in 12 different European countries and went on the street and asked people what is their song or music where they feel home. And it was a really, really interesting and touching experience, because a lot of people said a lot of different things. Some people said, of course, it's something like Beethoven and Ode to Joy, because it's like something which brings us together. But for example, in Athens or also in the Balkans, I got completely different tunes, and also tunes which are from now, like really, like, I don't know, from 10 years ago or from 20 years ago, or maybe written right now. So it's like, so I understood through this travel that one part where I'm in kind of a bubble of this classical music, we focus a lot on our heritage. But in other bubbles, when you open, when you go through other bubbles, I experienced in Europe a lot of heritage, which is also created now. And I think this is a really interesting aspect, which I found out for me, that our bubble in this classical world really could open up. For example, when I was in Havana in on Cuba, also like 3 years ago, it was interesting to meet a flute player on the street which studied classical music in the university, and she said, "Oh, it's crazy. In this bubble, I feel so restricted, and then when I go on the street and I play my classical music also, but also improvise with it, I can breathe again." And this
Right.
was even not a European country. So we see that we also transport from Europe also a kind of like way how to perceive or play classical music, or how to study it. So I think it's really time to open up to understand as classical music more like a framework, how we can play together, how we can value all kinds of music, and put it into a framework which is seen and which is also like which I spoke about in the beginning, this framework, you know, where you really can listen to and where it's not like somehow away like sand, because you can't, like, it was not presented in a precious way. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll leave it up to there as far as my questions are concerned. As each year we try to involve the many trainees in the European institutions here in Brussels in the Klarafestival. And this year it was for the concerto of STEGREIF that we invited them in a genuine hope to inspire them, of course. But we also want to give them the opportunity to ask questions, and there are lots of questions coming in online, of course. But I will give the floor now to my youngest colleagues in the European Parliament, Anna Spordini and Orlando Piper, who are both musicians and have both volunteered to help in the program. Don't know which of you, maybe Anna, can you start with a question?
Yes, of course. Nice to meet you all. And so here we have a question by Fiona. And she asks, how did we find the musicians for the orchestra? Was there an audition? And what are you looking for in a musician to play with you?
Yeah, thank you for this question. First of all, the orchestra was created by my telephone list, which was in my phone at that time, from musicians which I met all over Germany and Europe, from whom I was fascinated with. And the aspects which where I was looking for is that a musician have had a big love for the heritage of classical music on the one side, but on the other side, a really big love to experiment and the ability to improvise. And the last, and for me, I think the most important thing is also how is the person. So for which values or stands the person, how what comes from the heart from the person. Because for me, when you really love each other in a group and like each other and like click on a personal level, for me, music gets much more flowy, much more intense, much more emotional, much more sensitive, much more truthful, and all this kind of aspects. And since then, we started when we when a lot of more musicians come to us and say we would like to play in our orchestra, we have a certain way of applying to us, and they can send us an improvisation video and a classical video, and then we put this musician on a like a sub list, and when we have some possibility to invite a certain musician, we have a look to the people who like wrote to us so far. Yeah,
That's amazing. I mean, I really like the idea of it being more collective, and you've already spoken about different ways of structuring what's traditionally quite fixed, an orchestra. But I was curious about the extent to which you do use some sort of structure in terms of your arrangements. Do you create things around maybe a particular theme that you have in mind, or are you really trying to break with all musical convention as much as possible?
It's not about breaking conventional things. It's about what do we feel and what do we feel comfortable with, what do we feel organic with. And from the outside perspective, it seems maybe that we break some traditions, but we feel like playing without conductor. We feel like rearranging things. We feel like moving when it's possible, and Corona's not there. And so it comes from more from a need than to do something how we feel, and not like, let's break tradition. And every program is based on a different idea. So I have like three aspects in the work, which I could point out. It's like, one thing is community. So also what is like, for example, an audience wishing or saying, what is in terms of art, a thing which we want to point out, also maybe in society or politically or maybe just artistically. And the third thing is like, how do we live our values in the orchestra? And so it's like, and these three things of like the community in the outside world, the values in the inside world, and then the art piece, symphony, performance thing in the middle. This is like, for me, like a circle. And sometimes you get the inspiration from the community or from the values inside, or maybe from a piece of art which we found out, or which a festival said, 2024, there's Bruckner year, let's do something with that. And and then we go for that when it feels good. Yeah.
I think it's wonderful, the idea of playing together and having like a whole sentiment, a whole feeling that is in common with everybody. But I was wondering, you talked about the personal contribution of the musicians and bringing their own tradition, their own experience to the improvisation. Is there a limit to it? Like, is there a limit that one cannot go, or
Yeah.
or does it find by himself? Like, does it come automatically?
Yeah, like there is no limit in a way. Like, it's often you offer something and then you see how the group reacts. And we have a big feedback culture in our orchestra, which is for me a really necessary thing, because then you can redefine limits, when you feel something, and for example, in an improvisation way or also a recompositional way, and you do something which you never did before and you are unsecure about it, after the next feedback round with the orchestra, you will know whether it was maybe too much or too little. And this is a really nice thing also to try out new things, because otherwise you stay all the time in the same framework, and you don't reach out to new land which you don't know. And of course, sometimes there is a limit and we went too far, but then we know it also. So it's like, and we really try to go away from this force and right culture and good and bad. It's like we really try to to value everything, also bad experiences are important to make it better. So this is much based on how we interact also.
Really interesting. I have a question actually about we've spoken a lot about the past and kind of classical heritage, But I was wondering if what direction you would like to see classical music evolving in, and what role do you play in that process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. For example, especially when it comes to technique and like how I see also society growing. Um, of course, right now we are in a really special situation with Corona, and I think the technical side of our world right now is a gift. But for me, classical music was and is still a really precious thing, also for the analog world, for the physical world. And mm, a lot of things, a lot of details you, you you don't feel when you are in front of a screen. Especially energies of a person, especially how a person really is and spreads his or her soul light to the world. And this is really this thing where also in the classical concert, when it's really good and it's really silent and only one note is played, you could like hear a needle falling, and it's like wow, it's like a really special moment. And for me also classical music is like something which evolves much longer than pop songs, for example. So it's like a symphony 40-50 minutes long. You really take your time. It's something slowing down your process, your system. I think classical music when is really important as well for our health, to always be able to come to yourself, to feel yourself physically. um, and yeah, I would love that classical music also stands up for the life moment, and to really bring have the task or the social task of bringing people together, listening to people, also listening to different people. The classical music is spread on the whole world to really communicate between cultures, and really to be a best practice example for how can we communicate on a level of peace. Yeah.
Okay.
And one question we have is, to make all of this possible, how much does the orchestra normally meet, and how has this changed with the corona?
Yeah. Yeah, normally we are every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we were on tour for 1, 2, maximum 3 weeks. Yeah, this has stopped. And since then, we do a lot of online projects, and the time where we could play, so August, September, and October last year, we played 3 months through. Almost every day was something. So we really used the time to come together and to be able to play live, because this is for us still the the framework where we feel we can give the people the biggest gift. But nevertheless, Corona brought also something, looking inside in us, also in the structure. How do we gonna want to go the next steps, and also the performances, as for example the performance tonight, brings something special. We wanted to bring to the digital formats always something which is not possible in the live context. So, for example, tonight it's happening something really special for me, because the musicians were, for example, able to talk with the audience before and to create something based on this experience of the audience. And this would have been really difficult for like not a Corona concept. For example, as well, in the live context, we have different scenes which shows the personality from the musician, which presents a certain song. So you have like two layers of like the concert and a scene which is like more representing the person behind the music. So and this is for me something special when it goes to Corona concerts, because to define something new which is not able in the live context. Yeah.
Okay. Orlando, do you still have a question?
There are lots of questions I would like. Do we have time for any
The last
concluding
one.
question? Okay.
The last one.
So I'm just really fascinated by the way that you're conceptualizing music so socially, very much as a way to kind of interact with people outside, and also seeing the orchestra almost as a microcosm for society. Do you? How far can you go with that idea? Do you try to speak for people kind of in Europe, or how widely can you kind of cast your net to get these influences from different parts of society?
Yeah, that's a big question.
Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, it's the wish had grown over the last years that I think this as a little research place for society. I see it like that, because for me it's becoming much more interesting when I see it like that, because every little thing which is also maybe something getting difficult, or like a tension between some people, it's getting really interesting, because I'm seeing not only the tension between the two people, I'm seeing a tension between worlds which exists in the society. So a picture gets much more bigger. So that's why I also I'm really interested in either educating me further in kind of collective leadership strategies. And on the other side, I really love to also give our world to different worlds. So I love to speak, for example, in a certain company about it, or do little workshops on music in universities, or also I did, for example, a workshop with like people who studied economy and stuff, and create startups, and create also new worlds, but with different topics. And there I saw that this picture of music can help people for like topics in different worlds, because the music aspect is so good in a visual aspect, because you play music, you have to listen to each other. There's always the question who says the first thing and who accompanies the other person, and when does it change. There is this conductor, and what happens when they're, and it's like, it's so clear, the conductor who says everything and like gives everything into the group, but what happens when this conductor is not there anymore? So everything gets really so clear and so easy to understand visually also. So I think it's a good field also to, when we experienced more in the orchestra, and got results to really share this with the society. This is my biggest gift or biggest vision behind it, also to maybe say in 5 years, when we are existing 10 years, okay, we had here a really interesting experience going on, and we want to share it. Yeah.
Okay, that's a nice conclusion because we have to leave the discussion for now as we are nearing the end of our program. I have to say goodbye and thanks again to Juri de Marco, thanking him again for being present with us to answer our questions. Many thanks also to Anno and to Orlando and for the colleagues to the colleagues of the Klarafestival and Klara Radio. Please do not forget the concert in half an hour. Then you see the real thing and go to the website of STEGREIF, go to the website of Juri de Marco. You will have an idea of what an amazing thing they do. And maybe we shall someday see STEGREIF in the small concertos of the European Parliament that will start after Easter again in the garden of the Museum Weerts here in Brussels. So thanks to all again. Stay tuned to Klara and Klarafestival, and goodbye for now.
Thank you for the invitation.